Complaint committee meeting at 5:30. We'll get started momentarily. Once 5:30 hits and our people are back.
Yeah, I know.
So you're on. You're reappointed to be on the task force, right?
Yeah, I'll be there tomorrow.
It needs to be sure it moves. Okay, good. All right. I would like to call the meeting of the complaint committee to order at 5:43 p.m. Thank you all for your patience while we dealt with some technical difficulties, but we'll go ahead and get started now. Madam Clerk, would you call the first item?
Moving. So
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Item number 1, call to order, roll call, and agenda changes.
Are there any agenda changes at this time? Seeing none, would you please call the roll?
Member Kate?
Here.
Member Kate here. Member Highland?
Here.
Member Highland here. Chair Hinsey?
Present.
Chair Hinsey? We have a quorum.
All right. Would you please call item 2?
Item 2, approval of the September 25th, 2018 Complaint Committee meeting minutes.
I hope you had a chance to review the minutes. The chair would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right. Public comment on the minutes. Seeing no public comment, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Member Kate?
Aye.
Member Kate, aye. Member Highland?
Aye.
Member Highland, aye. Chair Hinsey?
Aye.
Chair Hensy, aye. Motion to approve the September 25th, 2018 meeting minutes.
Would you please call item 3?
Item 3, public comment. Members of the public may address the committee on matters that are within the committee's jurisdiction but not on today's agenda.
Is there any general public? Sorry. Is there any general public comment at this time? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, public comment is closed. Madam Clerk, would you please call item 4?
Item 4, file number 18049, complaint filed by Robert M. Smith against the Fine Arts Museums in San Francisco for allegedly violating Administrative Code, Section 6721, by failing to respond to a request for public records in a timely and/or complete manner.
Okay, before we get started with the procedures on this matter, since it's a continued matter from a couple previous meetings, and we have a few new members with me here today, I'm going to ask our clerk to provide a brief summary of the matter to date.
Briefly, Robert Smith brought a complaint against the Fine Arts Museums for not providing records that he requested, some having to do with the docent roster and his docent application. Today, he is here for a second time, along with Ms. Powers of the Fine Arts Museums, to state his matter.
Then I think we'll get into this later, but I think we've requested certain documentation from the Fine Arts Museum, but we'll get into that later. Respondent, or complaining, would you please approach for your 5 minutes, Mr. Smith?
Third time.
Speak into the microphone.
This is the third time, I believe, not the second.
Right.
May I speak?
Yes?
Oh,
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the committee. We should be ashamed, and we should be angry. This country is in the middle of a sea change. Those with money and influence seem to put themselves above the law. We have that phenomenon here in microcosm. I won't bore you or tax you by going over the record of this matter. I will just add 3 points. 1, I asked the museums recently whether they had received money from the Saudis, a topic covered widely in the news, and in which I therefore have journalistic interest. They told me they would get back to me with a 15-day extension. That's a pretty specific inquiry, and I submit it shouldn't take 25 days to answer. With very little research, I found that one of the curators had indeed been a guest of the Saudis. The question is, did the museums pay for it? Do they really need 25 days to find documents to answer that? 2, in a recent response to one of my public record requests, the museums blacked out many names. I asked what the reason was for their blacking out the names and what the legal justification was. The museum people, Ms. Powers specifically, told me their reason. It was that the material blacked out provided no insight into the, quote, workings of city government. In whose view and on what legal grounds? I asked Ms. Powers, and I have yet to hear back. This is an extreme version of Georgia Orwell. We in government will tell you what we think you should know. 3, this conduct is intentional, not just negligent or haphazard. The museums have assured me many times, indeed Ms. Powers has, that they would provide me with the information they asked for on a rolling basis. I remind you, if I may, that this began nearly a year ago. They have not said at any time that I was not entitled to the documents. And they did not give me any other reason for not supplying the material I asked for. They simply haven't done it. And they aren't doing it. You might ask Ms. Powers, who said she would do it in writing and hasn't done it, why she has not. Again, what choice do I have but to formally request you, this committee and this task force, that you refer this willful refusal to obey the law, which is what it patently is, in my view, to the district attorney for criminal investigation and possible prosecution. Please show that city institutions and individual employees can be punished for denying the public its right, our right, to see what they are doing on our time with our money and purportedly for our benefit. Members of the committee, thank you for your kind and generous attention.
Okay, thank you. Respondent, is Ms. Powers here? Yes. Please approach for 5 minutes.
Good evening. Should I start?
Yes.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, I concur, it's our third time here. First, I'd like to address, maybe it's a question, Mr. Smith's first point about his request regarding the payments received for Saudi Arabia. This particular matter has a specific file number, which has, as he has stated, goes back to some requests back from almost a year ago. That is a new request that we just got, I think, on October 15th. So as far as I'm aware, that is not related to the file at hand, and we're not even late. And the request actually wasn't as narrow as he stated this evening. If his request is, did we pay for anyone to go, then we can re-look at whether or not it will take us that long. If it's as broad as what he asserted in his request, then there's some other documents to review. In addition to preparing for this one, as well as the fact that the second item that he mentioned, it was from a request on September 3rd that we responded to in a timely manner. So we had that request to also compound. So as I have requests from Mr. Smith, I am trying to prioritize what can be done. The truth of the matter is the one that is currently pending is very large. The one that was outstanding that we had not yet completed with him was in regards to the third complaint of this file. That had two prongs to it. He wanted all of the correspondence between the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco and the Corporation of Fine Arts Museums, as well as the foundation to the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. I have recently given him the emails and the documents related to the second prong because that was more finite. We had to have our IT search. We had to have me review thousands of emails. And this is in addition to his September 3rd request and in addition to now the new one that came in. So in terms of being able to staff this, we are trying to review Mr. Smith's requests in a timely fashion, but the way I see them as they come in, if one is more finite than the other, then maybe I'll do that so I can be timely for that. This file has been inherited to me, and I am doing the best that I can to address the last outstanding one. At this point, we have asked if he would be willing to provide us some search terms for the search between Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco and COFAM. And he hasn't, but what we have told him is that we are dealing with probably over 250,000 emails. Part of the issue is also having our COFAM IT be able to pull those emails. So it isn't as if we just have these documents waiting for review. So again, there has been no malintent. There has been no, even negligence. There has been no negligence. There has been due diligence. And while perhaps the rolling basis was not done and the first time it was promised. We are doing the best that we can, evidenced by the fact that the request on September 3rd was answered timely, that I acknowledged his other request, which I came in this weekend to start reviewing that, and then as well as to prepare for this meeting. So Mr. Smith's requests are not going ignored. They are not going intentionally unanswered. They are going as best as we can with the resources we have, with the amount of documents to review.
All right. Don't go too far because I have a feeling I'm going to have questions for you. I'll go to my colleagues first and see if you have any questions based on what you've heard. Questions?
I do have one question, Ms. Powers, and I missed the front end, I think, of your presentation and Mr. Smith's as well last meeting. I remember that we had some conversations about the emails and the fact that the three entities, the two nonprofits and the city entity, share basically the same email handle. Is that a...
No, well, what we have at the museums are we have kind of two types of employees. When I say at the museums, meaning working at the Fine Arts Museums, we have the city employees, and then we have COFAM employees. But all of the employees there have the domain of at fineartsmuseums.org. So when he requests sort of Fine Arts Museum San Francisco and the 501c3, which are the employees of, we still have to review every single email to see if it is city business or if it's business really between two 501c3 employees to look at the content.
And so just again, sorry to clarify my mind. So basically, everyone involved in whose emails you're searching to see if it's city business or not, they all have the same. Is it FAM? What's the?
So my email is Powers. I don't know if I want to announce to the city, but
just the last.
But it's at famsf.org.
And is that also the same at handle that COFAM, for example, they use?
COFAM employees, yes. Mm-hmm. So, yes. So if you are hired as a COFAM employee, you will have at famsf.org. If you are a city employee, which many of our museum guards are, which many of our security guards are, that's really the bulk of our city employees, right, are also at famsf.org.
And I see that you did provide, and I know this was one of the other things that I know Chair Wolf wanted from last week, the MOU between the entities, and I do note that we do have that. But right. Who pays for, I guess, the infrastructure, the email systems, the IT support for, to allow these email addresses to be used?
Our server, and it was a long time ago put in, was from COFAM. And I have our chief of staff here just in case I misstate anything, but it is maintained by COFAM. The archive of the emails is COFAM. That is not city money.
So, and sorry to cut you off, Member Kate, I'll come back to you in a minute. So, your server is maintained by COFAM, the nonprofit?
Correct. In terms of the COFAM operates and provides support to the Fine Arts Museum. We have our city budget, and then it is helped through the entity of COFAM helps support the Fine Arts Museums. And so we have the COFAM employees, and then so our IT person who's pulling all of these emails is a COFAM employee. My salary is a COFAM employee. So in terms of having all of these city assets to attack this, we do not have.
But city emails of city employees reside on this COFAM server.
They are. But if you have, let's say, 1,000 emails, you may only have really, at essence, 100 emails that are from involving a city employee. But without looking at all 1,000, and that's just to use a sample number, we won't know what is really from a city employee.
Okay, Member Kate, did you have more questions before I continue?
Yeah, and just again to help because the MOU is pretty short. I mean, what responsibilities is it just oversight that? What responsibilities do the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco have kind of in operational capacity? I mean, it looks like from the MOU that a lot of the operational capacities, as you've already kind of mentioned, COFAM, that's why your COFAM funded salary and the server and the emails. So it sounds like COFAM is the kind of the operations. Fine Arts Foundation sounds like it's more of the money-raising kind of aspect, or the endowment kind of management.
Yeah, and acquisitions.
The city, the non-profit, the city agency, Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, what do they do?
In terms of basically what is the budget appropriated for?
Start there.
Well, the director is a city department head, so he or she, whomever is the incoming director, is considered a city employee, as well as being supplemented by COFAM. Then you have other, and then in terms of what the city money goes to, as we're saying here, let me see here. Yeah, the land and the buildings that we operate. And then, I don't know if there's anything. Ms. Bourne?
Yeah, sure. Can I just ask that you state your name and the record before?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Megan Bourne. I'm the Chief of Staff at the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco.
All right, Ms. Bourne, go ahead.
So the city appropriation, and I don't know if you got into this in previous ones, the Fine Arts Museums do not receive any cash from the city, so the Fine Arts Museums are allocated a budget, but everything that is budgeted is paid directly by the city to employees or contractors. So the city pays for the salaries of our security staff, our engineering staff, a handful of admission attendants, part of the director's salary, the director of human resources, 2 curators, and our director of security. So those are the professional positions. We don't have any other administrative positions funded by the city. The city also directly funds, basically our utilities. They pay the water bill and the light bill. They provide city attorney services. And most of the city allocation is in the form of capital budget. So the city pays a significant portion of what it takes to maintain and improve the buildings of the DeYoung and the Legion of Honor.
Are those folks that you just named off, your director of security, your partial director's salary, but are they COFAM employees as well?
Only 2 are supplemented by COFAM. That would be the director and the director of human resources and administration.
Are those technically considered COFAM employees?
Yes, they sort of wear. Sometimes they wear a city hat, and sometimes they wear a COFAM hat.
Okay. Other questions?
Ms. Powers, for you, the plaintiff mentioned something about you giving reasons for redacting documents. Can you explain that?
Sure. Well, I think he's referring to in the September 3rd one. I don't have those ones in front of me. I have the ones. I want to say that that request was related to other people's public records requests and the analysis of that. So there were people from the public who were emailing us, and in terms of us weighing the private interests of the public versus the benefit of receiving the name of a citizen.
Let me stop you right there. Those requests go in the public domain once they were requested of you. So that is a public document.
We can go back and give him, if he wants, I think it was 7 emails. I can go back, and if those names need to be provided, we can undo the names. There were also, in relation to this current one that's actually related to this file. Let's say a citizen, let's say somebody approached a foundation person, and that person is relaying that so-and-so from New York told me something. Those are private people who may not know that their names, or at least their last name, would be provided, down the road to, if somebody out in another city contacts
If you
somebody.
provide a response to that person,
We
that-
didn't.
that-
No,
okay.
we didn't.
That's what I'm
Meaning
getting
that
at.
if I relay to you, Mr. Highland, I just got an email from Joe Schmo in New York. He would like X, Y, and Z. I don't think that there's.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
If someone makes a records request from you, and you respond to that records request, both the request and your response is in the public domain. And those you do owe, Mr. Johns. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you don't need to do any redacting. That's not your purview.
And what about the exchanges? And I don't think we redacted from the exchanges within the staff.
What
so-
worries me is what he said is that the reasoning you're choosing to redacting, you're completely off base. Have you
Well-
had any sunshine training?
I have read many references, and every time we provide documents to Mr. Smith,
Have you
we
had any sunshine training?
I've not formal training. I've been in this position since August, but
Okay.
every documents that we provide, we
Right.
do confer with the city attorney.
All right. I'm not sure exactly. I'm still trying to unpack where you guys fit within our jurisdiction, but if you are a department head or you are, a city body, then, you're required to have sunshine training. And this is like 101 stuff that we're talking about here.
Perhaps I'm not articulating it well, but I have read the references.
Okay.
I'm not a city department.
All right. So as a first step, will you please provide the requester the documents unredacted that he's asked that are in the public domain? And if you need to go and get a definition of that, please
Are
do
we
so.
referring to the matters from this file or for the previous file?
All of them.
Okay, we'll take a look at it.
All right.
And I would like to say that it may not happen for at least over a week because we have a meeting next week. So in terms of the next 7 days, we'll have to regroup after our meeting.
We'll get to your timeline later. We're going to provide you with what we think is reasonable. So we'll take that under consideration. That's all I have right now.
So, Member Kate, if you can help me here. I don't remember all of what Chair Tesfaye and Task Force Chair Wolf requested to be provided by the
Complainant.
we asked the museum for some things to help us differentiate between, try to unpack this COFAM versus city employee. I know he requested the MOU, which we have now. I personally am still struggling to see if COFAM would be in our jurisdiction, but I don't know where my colleagues lie on that.
Yeah, and I remember dealing with Megan before in a previous case where we had to get to the bottom of exactly where does the fine arts fall, and I think we resolved that. I'd like to go back and look at that case. I don't know if I don't think COFAM. Maybe Megan, if you'd approach for a second. I don't think COFAM was a part of that issue. Do you remember about a year and a half ago? I think it was the list of your donors. I think that was the item. Does that ring a bell?
Correct.
Can you talk into the mic? Great,
Correct.
thanks. And I think we had this preamble similar to this, where you explain very coherently exactly what your entity is and the boundaries. So I think we probably need a little bit more of that to inform our discussions on jurisdiction as a first step. And obviously this is a little complex case because of the arm's length, the fact that it may not be a city body, yet it provides a lot of city body functions to you is interesting to me, and the servers is interesting. And so you could argue, well, maybe this is a private, email service, but then again, San Jose versus Smith brings that all back onto the table. There's a lot of things happening here that I think need to be unpacked a little bit more. And I know you've been here 3 times, but what we're trying to do is I'll give you a second. What we're trying to do is get all the apples and oranges sorted out so that when it goes to the full task force, we're not doing exactly this, that we know where we stand pretty comfortably, we can move forward. I would say anything you can do to provide information on a rolling basis, and we'll discuss with you what we think is reasonable in terms of time frame. These requests look pretty specific. I think the previous task force members have broken it down into 5 different requests.
Right.
So, you can do it. Maybe we'll talk to the requester and see what his priorities are and kind of develop a schedule which is reasonable to all parties and start proceeding down that. So you will still be asked to provide these documents in a rolling manner, but we're still going to see this before the full task force. And at that point, we may or may not issue violations to one or both bodies. That's kind of going to be the shape of it. Nothing scary. It's, this is kind of how it moves through. If nothing else, it goes into the record. It's a wake-up call to your department to get up on Sunshine and Brown Act and, these kind of requirements. Didn't want to scare you off at the beginning there. Does that make a little bit more sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Members, any other?
No, I think in this case we'll let the respondent, the plaintiff, approaching it and give him a few minutes. But
Sure.
I will say that with apologies to all parties, I'm leaning towards continuing this again.
I think we have to.
To try to dig. I know we asked you to provide certain things last month, and I know you did that, but I think we need to still unpack this and try to get to the bottom of this before we go to the full task force. Mr. Smith, would you like to approach?
So, Mr. Smith, before if
I'm just trying to be helpful.
yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah.
Go ahead and say your piece. I have a few questions for you, and I want to kind of try and put this in the right light to keep the ball moving forward. But go ahead.
I appreciate that, sir. 2 of you are new. We've done different things at different hearings.
Yeah.
One of the things I said before, with which the then chair agreed, was this. Let's bring this down to street level. I used to be an investigative reporter. You got 3 silos in this museum. One raises money. They say it's private. One manages it, so to speak. They say that's private. And one is clearly public, the museum. It's run by the city. And they didn't mention the fact that the city provides the building, gives them the building. Okay. So you've got what I see, just as a way of referring to it, I don't mean to be pejorative, 3 silos. Now, the last time I said this, I said, I guess Victor, the clerk, was here and Cheryl was here, and I said, if Victor writes the city silo, or if Cheryl writes or emails the city silo, those become susceptible to my public record requests. I get what Victor sent, not redacted, and I get what Cheryl sent, not redacted. So if the silo that raises money and the silo that manages the joint both write the city silo, which I gather they do in extensively, then I'm entitled to that. So a very easy way of dealing with this, at least in my mind, and I may have this completely wrong, but it seems to me just common sense. I asked him for the stuff in the city silo as well as the rest, but they haven't even given me that, which I'm clearly entitled to. And if Silo 2 and Silo 3 send the stuff to Silo 1, the city, I'm entitled to it. There is no big, complicated parsing of that fact. It just doesn't matter what Silo 2 and Silo 3 are. They could be the good humor man with the truck in, good humor person with the truck in Golden Gate Park sending it to Silo 1. I get it. So what are we talking about at the end of the day? I'm sorry I don't follow it exactly, but I honestly don't. If I may very quickly in 30 seconds say, I stress, folks, please, this has been nearly 1 year. And when they talk about not giving me stuff that they promised 11 or whatever it was, 10 months ago on a rolling basis, I haven't gotten it. I haven't gotten it. Now, how much due diligence can there be, and what resources can they possibly be using if I'm not getting anything virtually on a rolling basis? And at the end of the day, this is the San Francisco Public Art Museum, right? That's what it's supposed to be. We should know what's happening there. Thank you. Now your questions. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I'm saddened to see this has been going on so long. If you could do it all over again, would you phrase the questions differently to get maybe the kernels that you're really looking for? And if so, can we pull those to the front of the list and give them a timeline? If not,
I'll do whatever you wish me to do.
If not, because again, I'm looking at this now, and this is the third iteration, but it looks pretty detailed and pretty specific to me. If you're happy with it, we're happy with it. We'll keep pushing them to get what you want. But if there's something that's time sensitive out of all that you want to pull to the front.
Well, I think the Saudi thing is extremely time sensitive. However one regards it, it's newsworthy. At least the New York Times thinks it is. So I'd like to get that.
Okay, which file is that in? Which item?
Yeah.
I don't know where they keep it, so I can't tell you. Oh, the request,
right.
It's true, was a recent one because of the news flow,
okay.
Which said, have you received in any way, and I can't remember the exact wording, but basically money from the Saudis
Okay.
But
over the last 2 years.
we're dealing with a file that was created based on your sunshine complaint.
Right.
Have you filed a sunshine complaint that we're hearing right now about the Saudi matter?
No, because the
Okay.
25 days or whatever it is hasn't expired. I'm sorry, I don't mean to confuse things. Back on track. You're absolutely correct, Ms. Hinsey. I've been waiting 10 months or whatever it now is for what you have seen, and I shouldn't confuse matters. It's
Okay.
just that I really wanted this
Yeah.
particular
Well,
thing.
yeah. If you file that, great. The clock's ticking for them, and it'll keep ticking. But what's in front of us today are 18049 1 through 5.
If there's something I can do to help you, I'd be very happy to.
Okay. And let me ask you this: have you received any of this material?
A very little bit. And some of the material grew out of the fact that I'm being truthful and impolitic. I asked them for information about the docent program, and the person who then handled this material, Scott Jones was the name. I had a long conversation on the phone with him, and essentially, in my view, shamed him into giving me the roster of docents. He had told me something which turned out to be utterly, I'm afraid to say, untrue.
Okay.
I got that material, which led me to realize they were lying, and that's when I constructed these other requests. Public record requests.
Okay, I tell you what would be really helpful to me, and I like the analogy you use with the silos. If you do, because this is all at the forefront of your mind, but we're grappling with this. If you can take 180491 to where it has 21 items, 22 items, whatever. If you can add another column to that and say, 15 out of those 21 items, I believe, are in Silo 1, this entity right here. The next
I'm sorry, sir, I haven't been clear. I believe they're all in Silo 1 because I think they send them all there.
And therefore it becomes Silo 1. Okay,
absolutely, and therefore public
So
records.
You think, to clarify this and put it in terms that we would understand as a task force, you think they're all city documents and therefore public records?
Because they've all arrived.
Because they have all arrived in Silo 1 one way or another.
At the Fine Arts Museum.
If they weren't there to begin with. And as far as, if I may say, as someone admitted to both the New York and California bars, I don't think anybody writing from New York or has an expectation of privacy any greater than that of a California resident.
I agree. Okay. What would be useful is if you can give us a list of what you have received, even if it's just the 3 or 4 items. That would be like an index of records received would be very helpful to us.
You have that.
Okay.
The museum provided you a lengthy parsing in which they told you what they gave you.
What page is that in the packet?
Thank you.
Okay.
I honestly don't, and I hope you folks, good folks, won't get lost in a sea of bypaths here. I just want documents to which anybody would be entitled from this public entity, however it's parsed, however many silos they have. They owe any citizen, well, any person, this material, and they've taken an enormous amount of time. How much effort could they have put into it, frankly? 10 months to give me the little bit that they have. Something's dreadfully wrong. And I respectfully suggest that if I hadn't pressed, I'm not being paid for this. I don't have something in the skin in this game, really. If I hadn't pressed and pressed and pressed, do you think we would be nearing getting material from them? Do you have other questions for me, sir?
I have to say, I'm looking at some of, now that I got to this table, and some of the actual questions which have been broken down on a table. I can see their point. Some of them are not specifically questions, like the identity of attorneys engaged by the museums over the past 3 years.
They answered that one.
Not a request for records, no responsive records. And they answered it anyway. But being an investigative journalist and having some familiarity with Sunshine and information requests, help them help you would be my first advice. That's just the first take. I haven't gone through all of them. And
how would I do that?
Because you don't know what they have.
You see, I can't.
I understand.
Knowledgeably,
we come across that all the time. Don't worry.
The silo is a black box.
Don't worry, you're not the only one.
Yeah. So then what you can do is, of course, any communications between these lawyers and their client is attorney-client privilege.
Well, that's an interesting point because that was a shocker to me. I'm not an expert on this. Your statute, your enabling statute says they have no attorney-client privilege. I don't know if you know that, but that's what it says. It says it as clearly as possible. I said, okay, let's see the communications. Look at this statute. And I gave them the site. And the city attorney's office came back and said, nope, this is not good law and it's overridden by certain other things. So your statute is in some way faulty.
Our statute, as in Sunshine?
Yeah, it's really quite striking.
Yeah, that's something we're looking at. We're actually asking, we're looking to clarify that with the city attorney. That's an ongoing investigation, if you like. But now that you have the names of lawyers, just an example, you could say, I want to see all communications between this lawyer and this body, and give a reasonable range of dates.
They won't give them to me.
But at least that's how you have to phrase. I mean, that's kind of requests we deal with. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Thank you.
Yeah. Or if you have like docents or names or parties, communications, date range.
The problem, once again, with respect is I don't know what they have. If I got some of it, I could do what you're asking. But how can I do it if I have virtually nothing? You got to start somewhere.
Okay.
It looks like about a 2-page table. Yeah, that's 1, 2 of 5. Okay. The agency. All right. Did they do this for all 5 requests broken down by table like this, or is it just one?
I'm sorry. Which request? I'm not following.
I don't think they did.
Yeah.
Sure.
You're speaking to the mic. Yeah.
I think that
They did it just for number 2, right?
because I think the rest of the requests. So there's 5
Still
kind
being
of
parsed
requests
out.
at issue, and I think the rest of them there was just 1 or 2, as opposed to the 20.
Correct. Right. So only the chart was only given for that one, but then as you go through probably up to page like 140, you see sort of
The ones and twosies.
the ones and twosies. Like on page 139, bless you, is the letter that was written back that addresses the request that's on page 138. So that shows you what was provided in that.
Complete roster of all trained and then serving Dutch
Yeah.
and candidate.
And-
All right.
And I won't take Mr. Smith's time, so I'll see if I can come back to just address a few things. But just to point out that it is those pages, like that's the heart of where, if you flip through it, you'll see the back and forth of what were the answers and what was provided.
Do we have further questions for either party?
If I may say so, and perhaps this helps cut through it, I don't know. But at street level, donning my lawyer hat for a minute, it looks as if these two private entities believe that they have the right to be private, however it's set up. And the lawyers set up two entities which are supposed to be private and not pierceable in terms of finding out about management or funds. And the public silo, they say, well, that has almost nothing, so that's okay, you can have what they have. So it's this legal structure. But they made a mistake, in my view, because everything from 2 and 3, or I suspect without knowing, a lot of what's in Silo 2 and Silo 3 is also in Silo 1. And I'm entitled, and so is everybody else, to have it. So I think they made a mistake in crafting this structure that's supposed to keep the public outside that building, or at least the administrative tower. I don't mean to be cynical, but that's sure how it looks. But they're wrong, because the public is entitled under the way they've set it up.
If I can ask, and what makes you think that some of the Silo 2 stuff will be in Silo 1? That would be
because I don't know, and they may have changed. For example, they have now privatized a website relating to the docent program that was public until this began. So I don't know what they've done recently, but hitherto, I don't see how you could function in Silo 2 and Silo 3 without communicating virtually everything with Silo 1. They need to know what's happening. I mean, after all, it is the city. So it would be the reflex, the easy reflex, to send them the stuff, not to keep it private, unless it's the name of a donor who wishes to be anonymous, maybe. But in general, wouldn't one's reasonable suspicion be, and I guess maybe I shouldn't say it, but I do believe it, that the stuff in 2 and 3 is largely also in 1.
Okay.
I'm looking at our city attorney's memo on this. I'm just trying to see if there's anything that.
There's no way around their
No,
view.
no. We also have a city attorney that advises us,
Oh, really?
and there's and there's an ethical barrier there.
Chinese wall.
Yeah, so I'm looking to see what Nicholas Kola has said. Give me a second.
I'm sorry, is this on the subject of the Silo 2 and 3 material, or?
Yeah.
Yes, the chair mentioned that the last meeting.
What did he say?
He said, as I recall, that you had gotten an opinion from your counsel. He didn't mention that counsel was in the city attorney's office. And I'm sorry, I can't remember. It's on the tape. But
I'm looking at it right here. I mean, basically, there's some questions that they suggest that we ask, legal issues of determination. I'm reading page 16 here, fellow members. He kind of dodged the bullet based on what I can see here.
Yeah, he
I don't see much here. In fact, I'd like to send this back to our current city attorney and let them take another look at this, because he's just reiterating what's happened in the case here. He's not really
taking an opinion.
He's not taking an opinion on the silos.
As I recall, he didn't give an opinion in that memo.
No, he
And
didn't.
did Cola do this?
Yeah, Cola. He just said questions that arise, legal issues, legal determinations. His conclusion, there is no conclusion.
So maybe one thing we can do when we get to a motion, and I'm not suggesting we're there yet, is to have our current DCA, Mark Price Wolf, really look at this issue of the COFAM versus the Arts Museum and really dig into that.
Right.
To try to help us determine if we even have jurisdiction with the COFAM bit.
Yeah.
I think Mr. Wolf had in mind that there would be a memorandum of understanding that spelled things out, but
Right.
it doesn't.
Right.
It's like a piece of toast.
I agree.
At the end of the day, if we all step back from the plumbing, this is a city arts museum. Don't you think people in the city should know and be able to find out about it? At the end of the day, we're not talking about Bechtel or Salesforce. I hate to be simple-minded, but for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the frustration of, and I wouldn't share it near as much as the parties who've had to come, and now we're thinking maybe a fourth time to this committee before the task force, is what is it that we think the task force needs. And I think one is there's a legal question about the silo issue, and there's the understandable position, Mr. Smith, that if they're carrying out public business, who cares what the structure is? But there is a constraint that I think, in terms of a determination of a violation of the ordinance or the Public Records Act, that if that's the structure, that they're playing by the rules, we get frustrated by the rules, we have to just, take that up to other channels.
I agree.
But we don't know. So one thing I think the task force needs that we don't have, and I mean, I want to do my own kind of research into it. I don't know that it necessarily needs to slow the process further, is the determination of when, if at all, the intermingling or intertwining of a public business, this kind of overlapping of a public and a private structure, when, if at all, does that actually then draw in the nonprofit entities into the coverage of the CPRA and the Sunshine Ordinance? I just don't know what that answer is. Maybe it never does. There is a provision in the code, the city ordinance, I believe, that talks about nonprofit entities, but I don't know. Anyway, that's a legal issue that needs to be really fleshed out, and it would be really helpful if our council, the task force council, could really help us understand that, because this has come up already in my short time here. I've seen this come up in another context. That does then raise the separate factual issue, and it's something that I wish we could be able to address today, so we could get this going to the task force, but I don't know if we're going to be able to, is pretending or assuming that there are the legal separations that appear to be the case, where you have the nonprofit entity that you can't get their information because they're in Silo 2 and they're in Silo 3. But that raises the issue of, and obviously to any extent that you may not ever know what gets into Silo 1 that is discoverable as a public record. And I guess that raises the question that I would have is, whenever we see, for example, in this chart, FAMSF has no responsive records, and I don't recall maybe thinking about this last time, I guess the question would be, what were the searches done to know you were looking in Silo 1, FAMSF, and knowing that you didn't have responsive records in the public discoverable file versus those that might be, like, how do you distinguish, especially whenever you've got overlapping duties, overlapping email handles, everything is electronic these days. You don't have boxes of, maybe you do, but boxes of file folders where this is specifically public record FAMSF material. This is, as we've been saying now, Silo 2 and Silo 3 nonprofit. And yes, when a letter gets over and puts into this other file, I just don't know what's been searched. And I think the task force would need to know, and maybe that's an explanation that can be given today, whether or not it would satisfy the rest of the committee to help us move this forward. Because I think that there's probably enough stuff in this record to find or not find certain issues. I mean, there are a lot of requests at issue. It's just there's a lot of moving parts, and there's some factual things that I think would be helpful to know.
I think there's no question, legal question. I really think it is clear that anything that made its way from Silo 2 to Silo 1 and from Silo 3 to Silo 1 belongs to the public. That Silo 1 is public. There's no question about that. So with respect, you could do a great leap forward here. And I understand your desire to research the law and the rest of it, and I respect that. Why don't you just tell them to give me the stuff in Silo 1 responsive to my records requests? There's no real question about that. Just have them give me that, for starters. Then I can see what's going on here. What's wrong with that?
So how much of that stuff have you received?
I've gotten almost none of what I've asked for. So if they would just give me everything responsive to my requests that are in what I've been calling Silo 1, that would get me started, and I could see what's happening.
Okay, so looking at page 133 where they have that in a table where you have your requests and they say FAMSF, i.e. Silo 1, has no responsive records. That's them telling you that they looked in Silo 1 and there's nothing there.
If Mr. Cates' point is correct, that they really mean that they've looked in Silo 1 and not Silo 2 or 3 or 2 and 3 or something. I don't know the answer to that. But certainly, why could you not logically and easily just say, whatever suits you, but hypothetically turn over the answers to the records requests that are in Silo 1?
Right, and in many cases they'll say refer to COFAM. So,
well, if they say refer to COFAM, that doesn't answer the question. Did COFAM share it with Silo 1? If so, I'm home free.
But I think in certain circumstances, like there are two particular, and I know it's maybe not as easy to follow along because you don't probably have the spreadsheet in front of you, but you may recall seeing it. So, for example, there's one response where they responded that FAMSF has no responsive records, referred to COFAM. They're, at least as I read it, and I think it's a fair reading of this, is they're representing, we've looked, we don't have anything responsive to that particular request. That did raise the issue of like what did they look, where did they look, but
because they were kind enough to tell you that they, in their mind at least, have 250,000 messages, I guess, total on their server. And I don't know how many people, if any, they've got searching and how, but did they really, as you've been kind enough to ask, look in Silo 1?
Just a note on this before we move forward, it might help inform your decision. I ran into Chair Wolf this afternoon, and he said that if we move this out of committee today, it would be heard in November, and so that would be next week. So whether we're prepared for that, it's going to be something that we need to consider when we decide to move it forward or not. Because it doesn't sound like we're going to be getting to a decision ready for the full task force within a week.
I mean, it looks like a stalemate to me, looking at this table.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I'm reading this.
You mean that there's nothing in Silo 1?
Yeah, that's their claim. And,
Right.
And this is the, this is the age-old question. What do you know you're getting if you don't know what's there? We see that all the time. And I appreciate your position, Mr. Smith.
It doesn't seem, I'm sorry to say, it doesn't seem credible that there's nothing in Silo 1.
And one thing, and of course, I guess if the November meeting is just in about 2.5 weeks, right? Week and a half?
Next week, yeah.
The 7th. I don't know what else to ask in terms of the merits and thinking about the task force. What other information? I mean, there's a that wouldn't be like I have raised the issue about where did they search in Silo 1, but that's also kind of more into the merits of a full task force conversation.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think I don't know. I actually would, especially out of deference to the complainant and to the respondent, I actually think it would be good to move this forward to the task force. And if Chair Wolf, and I think he has this discretion, you can tell me, as we get ready to communicate with the parties to get anything up to that 5-day window, if he sees fit to ask for any other information that in his judgment would benefit the task force, I think that would be helpful.
And we could ask for information as well in our motion that you make.
I personally don't, other than what would be a conversation that, I've kind of already raised some issues, that would be more of a conversation appropriate, I think, for the larger task force and kind of the merits of a violation or no violation. I don't know what else I would ask factually. I think it would be good to ask the city attorney for, a legal opinion about the commingling of duties and responsibilities between, the issues we've raised today. But I think, if nothing else, it would be beneficial to move this forward so the task force can have other minds and ears on the issue. And if they need to ask, because I'd hate to delay it one more time in this committee and then go to the task force and then find that there's not enough information that a task force member who's not on the committee may think, oh, I wish I had that. I don't want to keep kicking this down further and further. I think you're entitled to resolution one way or the other. You're entitled to resolution one way or the other. And, that's my feeling. I don't know what else I would ask right now to help.
I have one question. Maybe you understood it, and I did not. My impression was that since, in response to your question, Mr. Cate, they all have the same email handle, more or less, then isn't all of this material that I'm asking for shared across the three of them? If it's all in one email bin, whether it's Silo 1, Silo 2, or Silo 3, then if it's in that bin, it is de facto and de jure Silo 1. So give it to me. The impression I had is that it's all mixed up in this pipe. And at one point I wrote a memo or a letter, email, I guess, to this committee saying this seems like the contaminated pipe defense. That is to say, everything's in one pipe, it's all mixed up, and therefore we can't give it to you. Well, of course, that can't be true, because every agency could then construct a contaminated pipe and no documents would ever be available to anybody. But that seemed to me what they said. That is to say, they're all mixed together. Well, good. If they are, give me what I'm entitled to, please, the stuff in one, whether it's duplicated in 2 or 3. If I understood that correctly, they've got the stuff.
So I'm going to make a motion here
And
to
that's what I was just going to call for. A motion.
to continue this, a two-part motion, to continue this to the call of the chair with recommendation for the November, is it the 7th?
Yeah.
Full.
Oh, I think maybe
Okay.
this is not, because I just saw him at 3 o'clock.
Okay, we can still make the recommendation whether
Yeah.
it's his calls to where it goes.
Yeah.
And the second part is for the city attorney to look at, in particular, page 125 of this package, and that kind of states the respondent's position as to Silo 1, Silo 2, and Silo 3. And I'd like him to, break down for us, FAM, FAM-SF, COFAM, and CCSF entities where our jurisdiction extends to, doesn't extend to, and how much we can persuade them to provide information. And I think Member Cates had some more discussion on CPRA and nonprofit, kind of examination of that as well. I mean, we're really looking for
A legal mind.
a legal unpacking of this case so that we know where we stand, and then can, keep this thing moving forward.
Is there a second?
And I guess I just want to make sure you're continuing it for further consideration by the Rules Committee, or basically
Actually-
are we referring
To
this?
the column?
Yeah,
To the-
actually,
to the
continuing
task
is the wrong
force
word.
at the call of the-
I'm referring it to the full task force with recommendation we hear it as soon as possible. So let me amend that part of the motion.
And then with the second part.
The second part is to have a more detailed analysis from our city attorney to look at the 3 entities involved.
And the Sunshine Ordinance and the CPRA's applicability to those organizations.
Exactly. That should
Correct.
work.
Second.
Second. Are there sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If I were the city attorney and you
So,
asked,
hold on one second.
Hold on.
Public comment on that.
Are there public comment on the motion not including the parties? So your party doesn't matter. So you can say your piece after we take public comment, maybe.
Yeah.
Is there public comment not any of the parties? Seeing no public comment, go ahead.
if I were the attorney you consulted on this, and thank God I'm not, I would want to know if all this stuff were mashed together, because that would completely alter my analysis of the circumstances. And I, therefore, would respectfully request one way or another that we get that single answer from the museums. Is everything one conglomerated?
Here's what I'd recommend and actually request from you. I like your explanations of the silo. I like your look at it. If you could write a letter to the clerk saying, please have your city attorney consider these issues in their deliberation, that'll get into the record, and that'll be part of the unpacking of this. So, you can use a silo example. You can.
No, I understand what the city attorney you consult. I guess it's the city attorney. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whomever you consult, what lawyer you consult, will ask. I'll bet you, is all this material that you're asking me to analyze one conglomerated mass? That is going to change that lawyer's view of this whole matter.
So you can say that. You can say, I consider it is, and I'd like them to analyze it from this perspective, or at least look at that. And then any analogies you want to put in there about the silos would be, yeah.
That's fine. It's just
Yeah.
your attorney won't have that fact.
Right. Well, he'll at least be asked to explore it. Yeah.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll on the motion that's on the floor? And would you mind restating the motion because it's kind of complicated? So just
Motion
just
to
so
the
that we
call
can-
of the chair, the city attorney to review on page 125 of the packet, and to state respondents' positions as to 1, 2, and 3 silos. Is that correct?
I would say
That's
Proactively to
that's not
provide-
part of the motion. That's just
provide-
that's
provide.
outside.
provide, and I would say that the city attorney provide a legal opinion on.
I think we had it pretty nicely in the record when Member Gates summarized it, so I would go back to that. But basically was to
Yeah, requesting of the city attorney a legal analysis of the applicability of the Sunshine Ordinance and the CPRA to the 3 entities at issue in this complaint.
Yeah. So if you just remember that on the tape and convey that message to the city attorney that that's what we want. That.
Okay, that's no problem.
Would you
vote?
call the roll in?
Member Kate?
Aye.
before we do that, I think the other party wants to say something.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Chairman Hines, just in fairness, I think we should let her speak too.
Okay. Go ahead.
If I may. I just want to make one comment and then one other point. The comment I have to make is that I've been with the Fine Arts Museums for nearly 9 years, and we've dealt with numerous Sunshine Ordinance Task Force requests and have handled them all and responded to them all. And in my experience, we've never met one like this. And we all share the same frustration. And this is a big knot. And our responsiveness, our perceived lack of responsiveness is not for want of trying. I would say that combined, our staff has put in hundreds of hours on this. We've probably had 100 conversations with our city attorney, just trying to figure out how to tackle it. And I really appreciated Mr. Kate putting his finger on the idea of how you actually, what is it that we searched for? And we went back to our city attorney over and over again saying, what do we search for? Where do we start? And, we kind of got the response, well, just produce things. And it's like, well, we narrowed it down to a 2-month period, and we came up with 250,000 emails. And it actually, the search, our email system, which is not a city system, it's a COFAM system, is over 10 years old, and it basically crashed it. And it's we have this analogy of just trying to bail out a sailboat in the ocean with a Dixie cup. We do want to try to do this, and to the extent that we can narrow in on some terms to at least get one little toehold. There's a giant universe out here, but if we could get some little toeholds, that would really help us in our sincere efforts to be responsive.
Okay.
And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Member Kate?
Aye.
Member Kate, aye. Member Highland?
Aye.
Member Highland, aye. Chair Fiona Hinsey?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Madam Clerk, would you call the next item, item 5?
Item 5 is adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All right. We are adjourned.
All right. Slam that gavel.
Yeah, exactly right.
Get that thing already. Are the microphones off?
Like.